My first memories of interacting with a public transportation system was like riding the bus with my single mother in Portland when she would go to work and drop me off at school. She would like time it so that I got on the bus with her on the way home. It was like pretty magical. By 8 years old, I was like riding the bus by myself. And then I started skateboarding. So that created a very unique relationship between me and space. I actually ran track and cross country in high school. And that shifted me because I was able to travel extremely long distances with no vehicle except for my body. Transportation is foundational to everyone's existence, right? We all move through space somehow.
We've moved forever, right? Used to be, had your horse or your buggy and you got on it and you went as far as you could go. And that was your experience, right?
I'm McKenna, a writer and transportation enthusiast.
And I'm Brady, I'm a filmmaker from Portland.
We just wrapped an epic trip around Oregon. We got to speak with all these people about what transportation means to them.
And these folks live in diverse regions around the state.
It's part of our nature. Americans, you look at the road movies, it's all about being on the move.
Having the freedom of moving and getting to services and places that I could be independent, it's important to a person's sense of worth. Transporte es libertad.
Test 1, 2.
Okay.
Wait, what are we doing?
Okay, we're introducing ourselves. Hey, Brady.
Hey, McKenna.
Brady, like why did we talk to people about transportation?
So these interviews that we filmed are part of the goal to involve everyday folks in updating the Oregon Transportation Plan. The document's going to guide all transportation investments in the state for the next 25 years. 25 years.
It has huge implications for our lives and communities.
The Oregon Transportation Plan looks at all modes of transportation. They have a bicycle plan, they've got a transit plan, and they tend to focus more on what they control directly, which is the highways that they own and operate.
ODOT was historically the Highway Bureau.
The old Oregon Trail is a memory, but the new Oregon Trail, a network of modern paved highways, opens to the world a scenic wonderland.
There are different colors of transportation money. That's partly the way it comes to us from the federal government, is there are strings attached. You can use this money for these things, but not those things.
There's also this like false dichotomy sometimes between like investments that benefit drivers or investments that benefit other modes.
If you can provide for somebody to ride the bus or walk or bicycle, that's one less trip on the road. And if that's a more cost-effective way to reduce traffic congestion, if you're a car driver, you shouldn't feel threatened by that. You should say, that's a good investment of my taxpayer money.
And actually, investments in multimodal transportation can also benefit drivers by getting more cars off the road so that people like Chris, who is a FedEx driver, can deal with less congestion.
The biggest pitfall is the congestion that we're having, which is causing a tough time for trucks to get in the city and deliver the freights to these stores, to these businesses. I believe that there are multiple ways to attack congestion, but we can't do that without expanding our roads and highways.
But then there's people that we talked to, like Barrett, who really denounced any wanting of highway expansion.
40,000 people a year are killed by cars in this country. If you look at the car, and especially in a dense urban environment, it's pretty much the least efficient form of transportation available. It's big, it's heavy, obviously it puts pollutants in the air, and generally it's only used by one person, and I think we would be wise to spend a little bit of time and money rethinking the damage that's been done, particularly to underserved communities as a result of the car.
We have been investing in auto-centric infrastructure for the last 100 years, and we see the results that come of that. The original Interstate 5 actually barreled through my family's neighborhood in Portland. And an additional point about that is the reason they lived in that neighborhood was because they weren't allowed to live anywhere else. So the entire governmental body placed vulnerable communities in a certain space, and then it became the path of least resistance like 20 years later. So I think there's not enough conversation surrounding imagining new ways of getting around.
We heard a lot about from people is like, and I almost feel like one of us should define it the best that we can.
Oh, yeah.
What
Sure.
is multimodal?
Multimodal. I can just imagine a montage of people saying that word.
Multimodal.
Multimodal transportation.
I do not even like the term multimodal.
What does Google say?
Multimodal access to public transportation considers and accommodates the many ways public transportation users get to and from a public transportation stop or center to access a public transportation service. Multimodal, my understanding, is that it's about many different ways of getting around.
In the future of Oregon, the only way we will reach our equity outcomes and climate outcomes and general joy outcomes will be shifting to a system that elevates other modes.
The state of Oregon should be investing far more in active transportation, people walking, biking, taking the bus.
There's this other closely related term that we heard a lot too, active transportation.
Active transportation is so important for kids because it's good for their bodies, it's good for their minds, and this is even more so, I would say, as we're in the midst of COVID and so many students have been less physically active and are struggling with their mental health. There's a growing body of research showing that active transportation is good for students' learning and that students perform better academically after they've had a chance to move and wake up their brain. The goal of Safe Routes to School programs is to make it easier, safer, more efficient, and appealing for students to use active and shared transportation for their trips to and from school.
And she's talking to us about teaching kids on how to ride a bike for the first time.
You know, when you think about that moment of learning to ride a bike and how exciting that is for a kid, and watching that happen to multiple kids, they're so excited about what they've just learned.
Even within one individual, sometimes there's competing needs. Like Jim the rancher needs highways to transport his cattle.
We're a little bit unique in that my wife and I, we have to be mobile to survive. You know, back in the day, you could trail them, right? You could trail them from here to Central Oregon to Texas, and that doesn't happen now. So now you got to roll in the big trucks, and you've got to load them and haul them and unload them.
But Jim, the community member, wants more pathways for people walking and wants more buses.
My heart is probably more into, you know, rail or high-speed rail. Certainly, there's a finite amount of natural resources. There's a finite amount of oil in the ground, right? We bring in 9,000 folks come into the county every day, and we don't need 9,000 vehicles on the road, right? We need 50 buses that are, you know, rolling on a schedule from here to the Tri-Cities, Washington, or Hermiston as we build our community here and our housing here and more of those folks move here.
On the flip side too, there were so many people we talked to who actually driving in some ways is more accessible to them than taking the bus right now. Like Nubia comes to mind when she was talking about how the language barrier for her actually prevents her from being able to use the bus.
Para mí, lo más frustrante es el autobús. Es más fácil para mí moverme en mi carro, mi propio carro, que en autobús. Una vez tengo una experiencia que yo casi no utilizo el autobús. Me subí y yo no sabía cómo decirle al chofer que yo iba a bajar. Y hasta que me dijeron, yo le decía, bajan, pero pues como no tengo mi idioma en inglés, yo le decía en español y no me entendían. Me decían, hey, jálale aquí. Yo decía, pero ¿dónde? ¿Cómo? Yo mejoraría algo accesible para cuando uno agarra el transporte público, cómo bajarse del autobús.
And what was the word that Deanna used?
Transcreation.
Transcreation.
So often, organizations or agencies or even government thinks that it's just about translating word by word, and that's not it. It's incredibly alienating. It's discouraging. It's demoralizing. Transcreation is actually does this mean in this language? What would it mean in this other language and culture? So if you want to be inclusive, really go the extra mile to be inclusive.
Sometimes you think about transportation or these systems as just like industrial and faceless, but it actually carries a lot of emotional weight for people.
Very often someone looks at me and, oh, she can't see, and then they think I can't hear or that I'm mentally challenged as well. is really difficult, and the only way to improve that is to educate and make it so that everyone has access to a workplace, has access to a restaurant or a concert.
And it's often those who are like furthest from access today who are making these incredible changes in their communities. Like Charlene is such a great example of that.
COCA stands for Central Oregon Coalition for Access. We started going to city council meetings, standing up and talking, and said I moved to Bend because I liked smelling pine trees and not smoke and smog. I moved to Bend because it's quiet and I can appreciate the nature. But guess what, folks? I can't get around. We cited about 250 curb ramps, sidewalkless streets that needed to be addressed. It's really because of COCA.
Warning lights are on. Traffic has stopped.
You cannot just say it needs to be done or that it's not compliant. You have to be willing to say it over and over and over again.
What was this trip about?
The state is changing, and the goal for a lot of people is to just have more choices in how we move. Remember that when we do choose to move and get around, the way that we do it matters.
An individual in and of himself or herself can't make much of a difference. The only way we can do that is by coming together. You need to have this sort of coalition, collaborative clearinghouse of we've talked about our differences and we come together and we agree these are the priorities. This is what needs to happen.
I think transportation planning for so long has actually been very disconnected from community members. And so what we want to do is get in the community, let them know that they actually do have the power and show them that they have the power to make changes. Transportation is about points, right? From this place of making memories to this other place of making memories. It's super important that we celebrate and protect movement through those spaces. What is transportation to you?